Hello, everyone. This is StrawberryShorty here with episode 11 of the Santa Clauses, Betty, which makes me think of the Fairly Odd Parents song. But anyway, so last episode, Mad Santa was putting into motion his plan to retake the North Pole, but will he succeed? Let's find out. And sorry if the audio is weird. I had to replace my phone and still trying to get into the hang of things. So we open up with a reporter at Santopolis talking about how amazing it's become. They're apparently calling this the Miracle on Dead Creek Road, which was the title of the last episode. Oh, and with this we learn that Fluffy's real name, Chris, is actually spelled with a K. Really not even trying to hide that he's going to be the new Santa, are they? And wow, this reporter lady is super rude. Like, she doesn't even care that Fluffy is getting closer with his father because of this change in Santopolis. Anyway, Mad Santa takes over the interview, and I kind of really want him to smite this interviewer. That doesn't happen, but Betty happens to see the interview, and of course she knows it means nothing good. Up at the North Pole, Scott is Scott, which means he isn't Santa. Carol and Buddy insist he see that doctor from a few episodes back, who seriously looks like Cho-Ching from Harry Potter. Am I crazy here? Anyway, she smashes his watch, which I think might have been magic. It's confusing and it fixes nothing. Scott reveals how another Santa hit him with magic, which the doctor reveals is bad. She has no idea how to fix this, and between her and Gary, we really need to think about restaffing. Scott sends Buddy to get his vest, which we know is going to end badly. Noah shows up, and Carol attempts to terrify him into revealing what he knows, but Noah insists it's not his story to tell, and Betty shows up, revealing it's hers. I'm not sure how, but I guess we'll find out. Betty briefly gets distracted by the fact that Scott doesn't look like Santa, and Noah tells her she chose the wrong successor. This leads to a funny moment where Scott jokes about how it's not that easy before Betty decides to tell them the story. She says that in the beginning, MS was a great Santa. Then things get sidetracked over whether Scott is better, and we cut away from what we actually want to know to what we already know and see a distressed Buddy tearing his room apart in search of that vest. How did it getting left on Earth not get, picked up? Why are there no detectors or something for stuff like this? Sandra happens upon this scene and learns the vest has been lost. Buddy tells Sandra to let Riley know he always loved her ears, because that's what every girl wants to hear, especially after saying she never wants to see you again. Sandra helps him use his magic to locate the vest, and they figure out MS has it. He's in pain from having used his own magic against Scott, apparently. Buddy overhears MS talking about his plan to go to the North Pole and destroy everything. He then does what everyone has been doing this season, refuses to speak about the serious thing. Instead, he sends Sandra to La Befana, claiming that's where the vest is. Then he apparently decides to go get it all by himself. We finally cut back to Betty's story. Apparently, after a few centuries on the throne, MS started cracking. He thought humans were ungrateful, which led to the custom of giving coal to naughty children. Gnomes are apparently associated with coal, and MS began confiding in them more and more. Olga was their leader, and she actively poisoned him against the elves, culminating in a war. And back to Buddy shenanigans, with him trying to get the reindeer to help him return to the real world. Why does he need to do this now when he didn't last time, or did he use Sandra for that? In which case, he really should have told her about what's going on and asked her to come with. Anyway, the reindeer agree, and we cut back to the story that Betty was telling. Betty was apparently a nobody back in those days, but she feared for the fate of Christmas. They actually address Bernard when Betty intends to seek out the head elf to offer her help. It was apparently an elf named Toots first, but he vanished and was replaced by Bernard. Turns out Bernard also vanished, but he managed to leave behind a warning. MS was going to punish humanity over Christmas by turning all the naughty kids into nutcrackers. Scott sends help to the control room to close the portals to the North Pole so humanity can remain in danger. Because, MS is still stuck there. The elves back in the past were living in fear, but Noah states that they found a leader. we cut back to Santopolis, where apparently the MS is back on to his Nutcracker plan. Fluffy asks if this means he's not doing the show, and while Olga insists he's not, MS actually seems to want to. Is this going to end with Olga smited and MS taking over at Santopolis? I bet Olga's going to become a Nutcracker. Anyway, back to Betty's story. Oh, yeah. So, well, at least until Santa starts slightly returning to looking like Santa, then we get back to Betty's story. She goes to the legendary figures for help, and they say they'll apparently talk about it. The elves wait for ages until La Befana shows up and reveals they won't interfere. They can't in the affairs of another legendary, though at least La Befana voted for them to do so. This brings up several issues. First, La Befana is a legendary? Since when? And what do you mean they can't interfere in the affairs of another legendary figure? That's literally their job, isn't it? They got all up in arms because of the whole Jack Frost causing mischief thing in the Santa Claus 3, but Santa literally planning to turn a bunch of kids into nutcrackers is fine? Edie is unhappy about this, and Betty thanks her for her efforts and tries unsuccessfully to rally the elves into fighting alone. Only Gary really seems on board. La Befana reluctantly departs, but leaves behind a sack that's apparently magic in some way. Scott interjects with some of my thoughts, both confusion over La Befana being a legendary figure, and how they couldn't stop Mad Santa, but were getting on his case about Buddy. We don't get any answers, however. We cut to La Befana, who naturally does not have the vest. Sandra manages to apologize, acknowledging she freaked out and knows La Befana was just trying to help. The two make up. La Befana emphasizes the danger of transformation spells, which can change your life in an instant. Case in point, the Easter Bunny is now apparently a lemon. Also, La Befana comments that no one noticed the Easter Bunny was missing because he's just that unimportant. Guess now we know the plot of the Santa Claus 4. Anyway, she asks Sandra to help her fix him, but the girl is hesitant because she can't take any more things going wrong. She ends up mentioning the missing Nutcracker, which La Befana takes note of. Telling the girl about MS, she mentions how magic has a price and they don't even know what Sandra's magic is. A bell announces someone has left the North Pole, and Sandra realizes it was Buddy. He's struggling to fly the sleigh. Back to Betty again. She talks about the elves' plan. They used music, which knows hate, to lure them away from the Mad Santa. Betty and the elves confront the gnomes and try to convince them to help, but are laughed at. Noel, who I have been writing as Noah this whole episode, and Betty share a sweet moment where... I wrote Noah again. Noel says he's glad he met her. And the two sides fight. It's not as epic as it sounds, but has some lore to it. La Befana stole some stuff from the other legendary figures for them to use, which is what was in the sack. Olga realizes that they were leaving Mad Santa unprotected and falling into the elves' trap, rushing to assist him, which is what we saw at the start of the season. She tries to escape with him, but they are eventually cornered. And it's revealed that the masked Olga is actually Betty in disguise. Mad Santa can't remember her name, so Noel spells it out for him. This happens twice because we're real big on the title drops in this episode. I did enjoy when he was trying to remember the other elves' names and called one not Bernard. I didn't know Curtis was there. Anyway, Emma swears revenge against the elves, and La Befana is revealed to be there as well, having resigned as a legendary to ensure she could use her powers against him. Olga and Emma are turned into a nutcracker, and no one had seen Mad Santa until now. I'm not sure why this was Betty's story. I mean, she's the most important person in it, but it didn't really need to be told by her, and it needed to be told ages ago. Anyway, Buddy arrives at the Santopolis Museum and meets Fluffy. He reveals he's looking for the vest before Mad Santa shows up with Olga. Mad Santa is disgusted to realize Buddy is Santa's son because that apparently reveals Santa is a human. Emma asks if Buddy intends to be the next Santa, but of course it's not clear. Buddy claims Olga has a secret soft spot, and her reaction seems to imply that maybe she does. This doesn't last long, however, as Emma intervenes, and concerned for Buddy, Chris tries to call 911 for what he describes as face-off but with Santas. I know it's for a joke, but I can't believe the operator hung up on him. Like, that's how you get fired in real life? Back at the North Pole, Betty is prepared to resign for going against her old boss, trying to take all the responsibility herself. She should have been banished because some of the technical rules, which are really stupid, a clause, if you will, said she should have. That only didn't happen because Bernard refused to allow it and covered up what happened. I like how we're acknowledging how awesome Bernard is in this show. These rules need some serious changing, though. Scott regains more of his Santa appearance, and he and Carol declare Betty a hero. Noel apparently is too, though if anyone should be getting in trouble, it should probably be him and the elves who covered up the stuff that's going on in modern times. Anyway, Sandra shows up and reveals that Buddy went to Earth. Back at Santopolis, Fluffy and Buddy have been duct taped to a wall. Not sure why they went that far. Buddy angers MS by defending his father, causing MS to turn him into a nutcracker. But doing this weakens him, and he states he needs to get to the North Pole to get his amulet back. Scott and Carol hurry to the control room just as all the portals have been closed. Now they have no way to get Buddy back. Scott comes up with an idea, taking them to the letter room, and Scott decides he'll send himself to Earth that way. Despite the risks, Scott is determined to save his son. Carol and Sandra insist they'll go too, but Sandra is convinced to stay behind with La Befana to defend the North Pole. Carol grabs a weapon called the Santa Blaster, tells Scott how much she's cherished every moment with him, and they teleport away. Unfortunately, the gun gets left behind. What's the logic of that? Anyway, that was a fairly interesting episode. Though the song that plays over the end credits confuses me. Anyway, I'm curious to see how this is all going to end. Will MS and or Olga be redeemed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!